The attorney's camera captured article that would abode America forever. A 17-year-old analgesic sat slouched in his chair, rolling his eyes as adjudicator Judy apprehend the accused join him. What happened in the abutting 17 account would become the best-watched attorney's video in internet history, aggregate over 50 actor times beyond every platform. But here's what Cypher knew aback those cameras started rolling. The boy's own mother was sitting in that attorney's, and she had fabricated an accommodation that would abort her son's heirs consistently and restore an absolute nation's acceptance in justice. Before we dive into this absurd case, acquaint me in the comments area you're watching from. I adulation seeing area my admirers are about the world. And don't balloon to hit that subscribe button so you never absence added astonishing cases like this one. Now sit back, relax, and adore the video. Marcus Thompson anticipation, he had it all ample out. At aloof 17, he'd already baffled the arrangement twice. Adolescent court appeal bargains, affectionate board who saw afflicted adolescence instead of what he actually was. A barbarous analgesic who had taken an innocent activity and acquainted actually no remorse. He absolved into adjudicator Judy's attorneys that Tuesday morning with the aforementioned beam he'd beat through every acknowledged proceeding. The aforementioned asleep eyes that showed no empathy, no accountability, no account for anyone or anything. What Marcus didn't apperceive was that his mother, Patricia Thompson, had spent the antecedent Hawkeye night authoritative the hardest accommodation any ancestor could any time make. She had alleged the commune attorney's office. She had appeared to adjudicator Judy's producers, and she had done article that would change both their lives forever. But we'll get to that adverse moment that bankrupted the internet and adequate millions of people's acceptance in affectionate accountability. Adjudicator Judy had apparent bags of arrogant teenagers airing through her attorney's doors over 25 years. Kids who anticipation their age was a shield, who believed abetment would work, who affected they could agreeableness or alarm their way out of consequences. But she had never encountered annihilation actually like Marcus Thompson. Within 30 abnormal of aperture his mouth, he would accomplish an act of boldness so abominable that alike adept cloister agents would after say they couldn't accept what they witnessed. The victim's ancestors sat in the advanced row, still grieving, still gluttonous amends for their daughter, who would never arise home again. They had no abstraction, they were about to attest an article that would accord them the cease they'd been abominably seeking. Because sometimes amends doesn't arise from a judge's gavel. Sometimes it comes from the best abrupt antecedent imaginable. Sometimes it comes from a mother's adulation actuality stronger than a mother's protection. Afore we actualization you the moment that afflicted everything. Afore we exceed what Patricia Thompson said that larboard her son aghast and brought an absolute attorneys to tears. You charge to hit that subscribe button appropriate now, because what you're about to see will restore your acceptance in accountability, in justice, and in the adeptness of an ancestor who chooses accuracy over comfort. This isn't aloof for attorney's drama. This is the moment aback enabling concluded and absolute adulation began. And assurance me, you've never apparent annihilation like what happens aback adjudicator Judy and a afflicted mother aggregation up to bear the absoluteness analysis that America abominably bear to see. Marcus Thompson wasn't built in evil. But by 17, he had able the art of antibacterial lives after activity a distinct moment of 18-karat remorse. The abomination that brought him to adjudicator Judy's attorneys was as absurd as it was brutal. On an algid February night, he had taken the activity of 16-year-old Sarah Martinez during what prosecutors alleged a robbery gone wrong. But those who knew Marcus accepted the alarming truth. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was an affected act by addition who had abstrused that actuality accessory meant altered rules, lighter sentences, and amaranthine additional chances. Sarah Martinez had been walking home from her job at a bounded bookstore aback Marcus approached her. Security cameras captured the absolute encounter. There was no struggle, no attrition from Sarah. She handed over her purse immediately, actually as her parents had accomplished her. But Marcus attempted her anyway, point blank. Then he stood over her anatomy for 37 seconds, assuming no emotion, no panic, no regret. He calmly absolved abroad while Sarah bled out on the sidewalk, calling for her mother with her final breaths. What fabricated this case alike added air-conditioned was Marcus' behavior in the weeks that followed his arrest. While Sarah's ancestors planned a funeral, Marcus was apparent bedlam with friends, announcement on amusing media, and acting like annihilation had happened. A back badge arrested him 3 canicule later. His aboriginal words weren't about Sarah or her family. They were about absent to alarm his lawyer. No remorse, no accepting of what he'd taken from the world, aloof cold, affected self-preservation. This wasn't Marcus' aboriginal appointment with the amends system, and anybody in that attorneys knew it. At 14, he'd been arrested for armed robbery. The adjudicator gave him association account and counseling, calling him an adolescent who bare guidance. At 15, he'd been bent ambidextrous drugs al fresco at average school. Addition affectionate judge, addition program, addition adventitious to prove he could change. At 16, he'd assaulted an acquaintance so abominably the boy bare reconstructive surgery. The adolescent cloister closed his annal and beatific him to acrimony administration classes. Anniversary time Marcus abstrused the aforementioned lesson. The arrangement wasn't advised to abuse him. It was advised to adjust him. And he had baffled the art of arena forth with that rehabilitation while acceptable added alarming with anniversary accidental year. He knew actually what to say in counseling sessions, how to arise apologetic during sentencing, and best importantly, how to use his age as an absorber adjoin absolute consequences. Marcus had advised the adolescent amends arrangement like added kids abstraction video games. He knew that closed annal meant beginning starts. He knew that board adopted analysis to punishment. He knew that actuality 17 meant he could accomplish about any abomination and still erring chargeless afore his 21st birthday. The arrangement had accomplished him that accountability was optional, that after effects were negotiable, and that victims were below important than his abeyance for reform. But Marcus had fabricated one acute miscalculation that would prove baleful to his arrogance. He affected that every ascendancy amount would action him the aforementioned way. He affected that his accomplished expressions of affected anguish would assignment on everyone. He affected that his adeptness to dispense caring adults would extend to adjudicator Judy's courtroom. He had never encountered addition who didn't affliction about his age, his potential, or his soba story. Addition who alone cared about truth, accountability, and justice. His aplomb was so complete that he had actually bragged to added inmates about actualization on adjudicator Judy. He told them it would be easy, that daytime TV board were aloof entertainers, that he'd apparently become acclaimed and maybe alike accomplish some money from the appearance. He spent the morning afore his cloister date practicing his innocent expressions in the mirror, perfecting the aforementioned attending that had bamboozled so abounding well-meaning adults who capital to accept in his accommodation for change. What Marcus didn't accept was that adjudicator Judy had dealt with bags of Marcus Thompsons over her career. She had apparent the pattern. The affected anguish followed by echo offenses. The abetment bearded as rehabilitation. The corruption of arrangement advised to advice afflicted adolescents by predators who had abstrused to bold that system. She knew actually what Marcus was the moment he absolved through her attorney's doors. Alike added alarming to his aplomb was article Marcus couldn't see from the defendant's table. Sitting in the third row, dressed in black, was the one actuality who knew him bigger than anyone abroad in that courtroom. Patricia Thompson had accustomed bearing to Marcus, aloft him, dedicated him through every arrest and every cloister appearance. She had been his better advocate, his arch-defender, his best reliable enabler until the night Sarah Martinez died. That night, aggregate afflicted for Patricia Thompson. And she was about to actualization her son, actually what accountability actually looked like. Adjudicator Judy Schindlin had congenital her allegorical acceptability on one bent assumption that abashed artful teenagers beyond America. She didn't affliction about your age, your excuses, or your potential. She cared about what you did, why you did it, and whether you had the adventuresomeness to booty albatross for the consequences. After 25 years on the Ancestors Cloister Bank in Manhattan, she had developed an about abnormal adeptness to see through boyish abetment in seconds. And Marcus Thompson was about to ascertain that his accepted tricks wouldn't aloof abort in her courtroom. They would backlash spectacularly. What fabricated adjudicator Judy decidedly baleful to adolescent abyss like Marcus was her complete amnesty to the sob acceptance and affected anguish that had bamboozled every added adjudicator he'd faced. She had heard every excuse, apparent every crocodile tear, and watched endless teenagers try to use their adolescence as a get-out-of-Bastille chargeless card. While added board saw abeyant for rehabilitation, adjudicator Judy saw patterns of behavior. While others focused on additional chances, she focused on aboriginal accountability. And she had aught backbone for killers who anticipation their age fabricated them untouchable. Adjudicator Judy's access with adolescent offenders was surgical in its precision. She would alpha with simple questions advised to measurement account and accountability. Do you accept why you're here? Do you booty albatross for your actions? Do you appreciate the affliction you've caused? These weren't aloof questions. They were tests. Tests that appear whether she was ambidextrous with an actually apologetic adolescent actuality or an artful predator who had abstrused to accomplishment the system's compassion. Her acceptability in acknowledged circles was legendary, but amid boyish criminals, it was actually terrifying. Chat had advanced through adolescent apprehension centers and adolescence programs about what happened to back arrogant kids approved to dispense Adjudicator Judy. She didn't abode them about their abeyant like academy counselors. She didn't action them programs and additional affairs like adolescent cloister judges. She captivated up a mirror and affected them to see actually what they had become, generally an agency that burst their anxiously complete delusions of invincibility. What fabricated Adjudicator Judy's attorneys decidedly alarming for addition like Marcus was her complete alienation to the accepted boyish aegis mechanisms. Sulking didn't work. Eye-rolling becoming actual correction. Boldness triggered an accretion that best teenagers weren't able to handle. She advised 17-year-old killers, actually the aforementioned way she advised 40-year-old killers, with the aforementioned expectations for accountability and the aforementioned after-effects for connected manipulation. Adjudicator Judy had been accurately called for Marcus' case because 3 antecedent board had bootless to breach through his arrogance. The commune attorney's appointment knew that if anyone could betrayal Marcus Thompson for what he actually was, it would be the woman who had spent decades abnegation to let age alibi evil. They bear addition who wouldn't be charmed by his affected anguish or abashed by his accomplished indifference. As Marcus Thompson able to airing into her attorneys that morning, he had no abstraction. He was about to face the one ascendancy amount in America who was actually allowed to his manipulation, actually aloof by his attitude, and actually bent to authority him answerable for demography Sarah Martinez's life. The moment Marcus Thompson confused into Adjudicator Judy's courtroom, his anatomy accent appear actually what affectionate of achievement he planned to deliver. He slouched in his armchair like he was clearing in to watch television, not face amends for demography at animal life. His eyes wandered about the allowance with apathetic indifference, occasionally endlessly to beam at the cameras as if this were all an absorbing bold advised for his amusement. What Marcus didn't apprehend was that every gesture, every eye roll, every affected affectation of boldness was actuality catalogued by an adjudicator who had apparent this exact achievement 1,000 times before. Adjudicator Judy began with her accepted opening. Account the accused with the force they deserved, annihilation in the additional degree, armed robbery, abolition of a family, the demography of 16-year-old Sarah Martinez's activity in alleged blood. As she battened Sarah's name, article arresting happened in that courtroom. Everyone, the cloister staff, the gallery, alike the cameraman showed arresting account for the victim actuality remembered. Anybody except Marcus Thompson, who actually yawned during the account of the accused that had destroyed the Martinez ancestors forever. Aback Adjudicator Judy asked her aboriginal question. The accent was able but firm. Mr. Thompson, do you accept the accused join you? Marcus' acknowledgement appear aggregate amiss with his appearance in aloof bristles words. Yeah, whatever. I assumption so. Not yes, your honor. Not an accepting of the calmness of the moment, aloof accidental adjournment delivered with a absolve that appropriate this absolute proceeding was below his attention. Adjudicator Judy's eyes narrowed slightly, acquainted anon that she was ambidextrous with an arbiter sociopath who believed his age fabricated him allowed to absolute consequences. The analytic continued, and with anniversary exchange, Marcus' boldness became added audacious and added calculated. Aback asked if he accepted the appulse his accomplishments had on Sarah's family. He responded with an affected blow and said, Look, lady, actuality happens, all right? Bodies die every day. The words abashed in the air like poison. Sarah Martinez's mother, sitting in the advanced row, let out a quiet sob. Her daughter's analgesic had aloof referred to her annihilation as actuality happens while acclamation a federal adjudicator as lady. Adjudicator Judy's admonishing was bright and measured. Mr. Thompson, you will abode this cloister with respect. You will sit up beeline, and you will exceed the force of what you've done. But Marcus had misread the allowance completely. Instead of compliance, he saw this as a claiming to his anxiously complete angel of invincibility. He leaned added aback in his chair, beyond his arms, and delivered the acknowledgement that would allowance his fate. Or what? You activity to accelerate me to my room? I'm aloof a kid, remember? The attorney's atmosphere afflicted instantly. Adept cloister admiral who had apparent aggregate in their decades of account exchanged abashed glances. The agent actually paused her accounting for a moment, clumsy to accept what she had aloof heard. A 17-year-old analgesic had aloof mocked adjudicator Judy to her face, while absolution his victim's annihilation as an atomic inconvenience. Alike by the standards of adolescent court, this akin of affected boldness was unprecedented. Adjudicator Judy's acknowledgement was controlled but deadly. Mr. Thompson, you assume to accept that your age protects you from accountability. You assume to anticipate that actuality 17 agency the rules don't administer to you. Is that correct? Marcus, activity assured that he had auspiciously accustomed his untouchable status, fabricated the baleful aberration of acceleration down. Pretty much, yeah. What's the affliction that can happen? Juvia, until I'm 21, big deal. I'll be out active my activity while you're still actuality anticipation bodies on TV. The blackout that followed was deafening. Marcus had aloof accepted to examination Sarah Martinez's annihilation as annihilation added than acting inconvenience. He had above-board mocked the amends system, disrespected a federal judge, and approved complete sociopathic alienation to the affliction he had caused. But what Marcus didn't apprehension was the movement in the arcade abaft him. What he couldn't see was the woman in the third row, who had been watching this absolute barter with growing abhorrence and shame. Patricia Thompson had aloft the boy sitting at that defendant's table. But she was watching a monster accomplish for the cameras. Every eye roll, every smirk, every affected insult was artful through her heart. She had spent 17 years arresting this child, authoritative excuses for his behavior, enabling his acceptance that after effects were optional. But watching him apish Sarah Martinez's afterlife while disrespecting adjudicator Judy had assuredly apparent her the accuracy she had been alienated for years. Her son wasn't a afflicted jailbait who bare added chances. He was an analgesic who acquainted no remorse. And her years of aegis had helped actualize the monster now assuming for America's cameras. Patricia Thompson rose boring from her seat. Her accommodation made. It was time to accept amid enabling her son's angry and acknowledging amends for Sarah Martinez. Adjudicator Judy had dealt with all us teenagers for decades. But Marcus Thompson's achievement was testing alike her allegorical patience. She was formulating her acknowledgement to his latest insult-aback article aberrant happened in her courtroom. A movement in the arcade bent her eye. A woman in a atramentous dress was boring assent from her bench in the third row, tears alive bottomward her face, her easily abashed with what looked like a mixture of affliction and determination. Marcus was still basking in what he believed was his achievement over the administrative system, actually blind that his apple was about to collapse. He was actually animated at the cameras aback adjudicator Judy's absorption, confused to the continuing woman. "Ma'am," adjudicator Judy said, her articulation accustomed to agenda of curiosity. "Do you accept article you'd like to say to this court?" The catechism abashed in the air, and for the aboriginal time back entering the courtroom, Marcus angry about to see who had disconnected his performance. The smile died on his face instantly. The blush drained from his cheeks. The arrogant jailbait who had been biting a federal adjudicator abnormal beforehand aback looked like actually what he was. A 17-year-old boy who had aloof accomplished his better adherent was about to become his harshest critic. "Mom," he whispered, the chat almost audible, but best up by the attorney's microphones. "Mom, what are you accomplishing here?" Patricia Thompson absolved bottomward the alley with abstinent steps, anniversary footfall alveolate through the bashful attorneys like an admission to acumen day. Cloister Admiral tensed slightly, borderline of agreement for this aberrant situation, but adjudicator Judy gestured for them to acquiesce her approach. Every actuality in that attorneys accepted they were witnessing article extraordinary. A month,